then came back again. And we're doing a lot in the DCT space and the RWE space as well. But we see that a lot of individuals, a lot of leaders in the pharmaceutical industry still are a little restrained when it comes to decentralized clinical trials and remote data capture and RWE. So we see that AI, blockchain, RWE, DCTs, these are all buzzwords. But we also see that these technologies are being adapted by the pharmaceutical industries and by the CROs. But the pace is very slow. Our aim is to educate the industry, build a community, get all of us together such that this adaptation could be a little quicker, a little faster. We all can come together, learn, spread the awareness outside, when you go out, speak to more people. So thank you again for being here today. I hope that we make wonderful connections, speak a lot more to each other, and when we step out with a more open mind, a lot more knowledge, and hopefully it interests you enough to come back again, get your friends and folks so we can build a larger community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rashmi. Very well put. Now I'd like to introduce our keynote speech for this evening, Aditya Tallapragada. Aditya is president of AKT Health, has 18 years plus experience, international, multilingual, and multicultural experience, entrepreneur in health tech and fintech, founded AKT Health and Interact to drive healthcare innovation, expert in AI, ML, blockchain, IoT, and digital transformation, speaker, investor, advisor in technology and healthcare, strategic advisor for blockchain enterprises and startups, expertise in clinical, commercial, and financial domains, has deep knowledge of market valuation, econometrics, and regulatory affairs. Aditya.
Hello. Thank you very much, everyone. Basically, today I'm going to talk a bit about the technologies that we have been using in DCTs, of course, and also the real-world evidence that is generated through all the clinical trials. And then, of course, we all know what is DCT and what is real-world data. Of course, it's a new area where you have been seeing that tons and tons of data has been generated through clinical trials, and then there are more technologies that have been integrated into clinical space. You also see there is a different kind of a structure, especially during the COVID. You see a lot of home care diagnostics that have been happening at home, and then that was actually being adopted into a clinical trial. Of course, with a lot of doubt whether or not this data has been really validated or not. These are the challenges that we see. So today I'm going to talk a bit about the technologies that have been changing this space, especially on the IoT, wearables, smart devices. We also see a lot of AI, machine learning, and natural language processing coming into picture. We also talk a bit about why security is an important aspect when we collect the data, and then cloud computing, big data analytics, and other digital health apps. So before I jump into the actual topic about technology, you can see that we have a lot of non-digital versus digital data that's been collected. So when you say about non-digital, you see we still have a lot of home care services, at-home sample collections, we have medication logistics. There are also a lot of things that are happening on the paper. At the same time, we also have a lot of digital data that's coming onto the clinical trial, which we say wearables, remote patient monitoring, telemedicine, patient-reported outcomes, e-consent management, and other. Nowadays, we also see the data is being collected through augmented reality, which is virtual care happening through hospitals. So this is just like a picture where when you actually are undergoing a clinical trial, how many different participants are already in this. This is a picture from the ACROA, the Clinical Research Association. But then what they are trying to say is when we are actually integrating with so many different technologies in one area, how do we best regulate them and how we actually bring the best data so that so that the approvals are quicker. The second part, as you can see, there is a lot of data that's coming on, not just through devices, of course, through EHR data. There's also other data that we are trying to integrate. And then most of the time, of course, the data that's coming from the EHR and other areas is still fine, but we see a lot of data that's coming through unstructured ways, where your doctors just write a notes in the EHRs, when they actually also write a notes when they are doing a clinical trial. Sometimes the clients come to us and ask us to utilize this unstructured data and connect it to the clinical trial for better evidence generation. So we have been seeing that in order for us to actually do a deep research into all these areas, like patient journeys, treatment pathways, burden of illness, we do actually collect a lot of personal health records. But only challenge that we have been seeing here is when the data is coming from different source of point, how do we actually use the technology in the best way so that it's completely clinically validated. Especially when we were doing a decentralized clinical trial in Japan, the biggest challenge we see was the apps. There are multiple apps. I'll talk about a bit later on those devices as well. Let me just jump into the next one. So we have been using, in a single trial, we have been using multiple technologies right now, from IoT to AI. You can see why each of them are very important and each of them are kind of becoming an integral part of a single clinical trial. But then the challenge you see is the integration complexity of each of these. Whenever you work with wearables, especially, each of these wearables have a different app that is connected. And then every app is not even regulated by anybody. So this data is not being reported anywhere. So the FDA, when the FDA or MHLW, when the data gets submitted, they have doubts whether our data is clinically validated data or not. So that's why I think there needs to be some kind of regulation around the data that's been collected from the wearable. And the second part challenge we see is the logics behind the AI ML, when we are using a lot of retrospective data that's coming from different old clinical trials. One of our clients asked us to actually do a research on one of their 100 years data, which is actually lying there, mostly in papers coming from different protocols, different sets, and then they also asked us to actually verify the claims data or the prescription data that's happening. So obviously, the technologies like cloud computing, analytics, AI, ML, all these things come into picture, but at the same time, whether or not the logics that we are applying onto this data, are they clearly validated or not, is the biggest challenge that we see. And finally, what we are talking here is, when we are doing a clinical trial, there's also one of the different challenges that we see from our clients is they always wanted us to include patient voices into the clinical trial, which has been a new area where they want to include what the patient felt in the past, how they want to actually design the clinical trial for them. So a lot of these things are collected to these apps. Even before a trial is started, when we start patient recruitment itself, we are trying to collect the patient voices, and also people are actually undergoing a clinical trial. We have been implementing those into the protocol design. So next, when I'm talking about wearables, obviously you could see that there are different kinds of wearables that we are trying to use, get the data, and then also now you can see there are tons and tons of data. Every data point that's coming onto the trial is coming from some kind of a device. But the biggest challenge here, you can see, is that every data point is not being validated. So that's the biggest challenge here. So that's one of the reasons why what we thought is having a software as a medical device, an application which is already a medical device, which also has responsibility to submit the data to the regulatory bodies, it was one of the things that we thought. And in application, all these, when you say the integration could be on the cloud or iPhone and Android, but then these applications are not really approved, or these products are not all approved by the FDA. So mostly they are not suitable for a clinical trial. That was the biggest challenge. But still, in a decentralized clinical trials, most of the times what happens is they still use a lot of different devices. But when you apply, when you try to generate evidence from this, there's always abnormalities because these are not validated software. So that's where we thought maybe having a software which is approved by a medical regulatory authority, and then we also have some kind of responsibility to approve the data. So that's where we thought, okay, building something with an integrated architecture of IoT, AI, and the blockchain might actually give some edge to the product that we are building. Yeah, this is one of the areas that I just wanted to discuss once again from the regulatory standpoint. When you say validated, early stage and conceptual, what we are trying to understand here is when you see still the clinical trial planning and execution is not 100% validated when you actually try to use generative AI, because most of this generative AI, they are applied on publicly available data. So obviously most of the clinical trials are not publicly available. They are only available, the results are available, but not the other data. So in order for us to do AI strategy on a clinical trial planning, it completely depends on how many people can actually share this data to create a completely validated system. So still there is a lot of data gap there, but then drug discovery and design, obviously you see there are a lot of companies who have come up with there's a lot of publicly available data on that, and then they're just trying to see what's the best output that they are looking at, and then we can still see there are some validated systems out there, especially when people are using a generative AI. I don't want to really dig deeper into what AI does and what it does, but I'm trying to say here is when you look at overall patient picture, one of the most important things like clinical trial planning and interoperability with the EHR systems and preventive health care, and then you can see diagnostic image enhancement. There are few things which are still at a conceptual stage. So that's what we are thinking that, even though all these generative AI are still coming into picture, it's not yet at that stage because not everything is 100% validated, and then still most of this data is very segregated, and then there's a lot of providers or payers and pharmaceutical firms need to come together in order to create a completely validated patient system. This is once again, I wanted to talk about the security part, and there's a huge things that's going on the security side. We see patient data anonymization, and then because one of the difficult challenges that we see in Europe is still having a lot of issues recruiting patients, and then they are now open to recruit patients from the Middle East as well. But then the challenge is taking the data from Middle East to Europe. Of course, their data, they don't have so many regulations like HIPAA or something like that. They can easily share. But then only Dubai was able to share the data because their entire data was on blockchain, and then they could actually completely move their data across the countries, even without bothering that their data might be actually stolen somewhere. So that's one of the security aspects that some of the Middle East countries are doing in terms of technology, which I think is a very important area for more patient data sharing. So that's where if you share more patient data, which is more secure, I think you can see that the conceptual stage, whatever was in conceptual stage, could be completely validated. That was the point I was trying to make in terms of security, why security is important in terms of actually making a completely validated system. And then, so what happens, as you can see, there is a lot of things across systems, but in order to create a contract or agreement or ethical submission, but these technologies are really fit for purpose or validated. So biggest challenge wherever we go and wherever we talk about new technologies is that the clients want a completely validated system, right from the source of collection, from the single patient which uses a single hardware, a piece of hardware, which should be a FDA approved. The software should be approved, and then entire process has to be completely validated. So this is what they are looking at. So decentralized clinical trials are still not at that stage where your entire process is 100% validated. So that's the reason why there's still some kind of friction of most of the companies trying to adopt to this decentralized clinical trials, because the lack of that integrity between the systems still don't talk with each other. And then once they start talking with each other, there is some gap on how we integrate those systems, because you have this interoperability like FHIR, SLSN, and all these things. But still, in terms of collecting new data from different devices, there is not a strict regulation that has been formed yet. So that's the reason why I think more and more companies should come together and see if they can actually create a regulation around the completely validated decentralized clinical trial, so that it becomes more easy to recruit patients. One of the other challenges also we see whether or not our sites technically prepared. When you introduce some sites with a hybrid trial where some of the patients are on traditional clinical trial, but some of the patients want to be monitored through medical devices or wearables or something like that. But not all sites are really prepared about it, because they still have this dilemma that whether or not this data that's coming from this wearable device is completely valid or not. So these are the challenges that we see sometimes when we actually talk to the clients. So that's why I thought maybe discuss about how technology integration is very important, how patient security is important in order to do a DCT regulation. Yeah, that's what I was talking. This needs to be some kind of decision support system using IoT blockchain. It's still on the conceptual stage. We have applied for a regulatory approval in Japan. We are now moving towards an approval in EU space, but then hopefully once we get approval in the other countries, I think we also want to bring it to US, because the devices that we are using, each of the software piece is actually also connected to one kind of hardware device, which makes it more complex, because each of these hardware devices also have to be approved by FDA or the local regulatory bodies. On top of it, this is actually a software as a medical device, and then initially, even though it's a software, we can still use it for remote patient monitoring, like ECOA, ePro, and things like that. But when it comes to a decentralized clinical trial or digital therapy, so why DCT and DTX, digital therapeutics, is basically because we integrate this, the back end of the system to tons and tons of prescription data, claims data, different types of data that we have seen in the previous slides, and trying to actually tell the patients that you might be at risk or something like that. So that's the reason why this was considered as a class 2 medical device, because we actually suggest the patient for some kind of a treatment based on the data that's coming in. Of course, we also wanted to keep it more funny for the people. So right now we are doing a clinical trial, and let me just quickly jump into that one. We are doing a clinical trial. This is for an oncology area, chemotherapy. So what happens is after the chemotherapy, you will have a fever, and then this fever has been one of the major causes of hospitalization or death. So because of the data that's connected to the EHR, we are able to predict the fever almost 12 to 18 hours ahead. I think one of the other things that we have seen in last few trials that we are doing for our product was continuous monitoring device. This is where we were focusing on in the oncology space, even oncology space, cardiovascular space are the two areas that we have been working, but we also see a lot of diabetic patients coming up and asking us if there is a continuous blood glucose monitoring device that's approved and that could be connected, so that we could see how our patient is reacting to certain kinds of foods and then how he is actually being monitored for severe diabetic patients. So, yeah, in short, that's what. Yeah, basically, in short, that's what I'm trying to say. We have, because of the integration of lots of data, we'll have, we can accelerate the trial setups, we can actually introduce analytics, reduce the study costs, and then also work with multiple stakeholders, and then also integrate with other new technologies so that we create more validated systems. Yeah, I'll be around here if you have any questions, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.